Hi, and welcome to our first Q&A session on our podcast. Thank you for sending in questions as per the request made in our first episode. Although this podcast has been published and this intro is being recorded in October 2020, the actual Q&A session was recorded in March. So this should explain whether or no questions directly relating to COVID-19, i.e. questions relating to COVID secure office space, the post-pandemic workplace, hub and spoke workplaces, and the like. These will undoubtedly be covered in our next Q&A session. If you have any questions, comments and feedback regarding this session, please email contact us at theofficeproviders.com and mark the subject podcast so it gets to the right place. Or contact us through Twitter, which is, our handle is tops.com, all spelt out in letters. Please also submit questions for the next session in the same way. We do not include names or contact details, so all questions and feedback is anonymous. On some questions that require technical and longer explanations, we will give an overview or synopsis of an answer and point to resources such as pages on our website or elsewhere on the web where you can find out further information. Also, where some questions are related to each other, we have tried to cluster these together, especially if the answer to one leads on to the next question. Otherwise, they are pretty random. So I'd just like to say thank you to all of those who sent in questions, and we hope we can answer these satisfactorily. So, question 1. Why are flexible workspace options becoming so much more popular? Okay, so this is a long story that spans back 30 plus years, and we've written articles around the web on this and on the website. You can check out my Quora account on the link where you will find a few of these. So generally, the concept of flexible workspace came about in the 1980s in the form of business centres where travelling business people could conduct business and hold meetings whilst on the road instead of hotel lobbies, coffee shops, cafes and so on. As business centres evolved, they became popular with startup companies as they provided instant plug-and-play office space with all overheads covered in the monthly licence fee. They were also available on flexible contract terms, so there was no need to sign any long, onerous leases, which can obviously hinder a startup. As the successful startups grew, so did the business centre model, and they became more accustomed to accommodating SMEs and corporate companies. And other large entities. Certain international office providers, such as Regus and Servcorp, grew rapidly and opened business centres in multiple towns and cities globally. And other international, national and local providers and operators grew their models concurrently. Then during the Great Recession of 2007, 2008, many businesses unfortunately failed or had to lose many staff members, meaning that tenants had to either downsize their real estate footprint very quickly or move out and surrender their lease, but both of these are not easy things to do. For this reason, companies of all sizes started looking for office space that was available on flexible terms, i.e. easy in and easy out contracts that would allow them to downsize into a smaller suite if required, or also upsize when things started improving.
There were also many people who had their roles made redundant and were looking to set up companies on their own. So there was also a new wave of startups that would utilise the business centres that were already in place. Due to the recession, there was also a global jobs crisis, and young adults were entering the job market with very few traditional job prospects. That said, the barriers to entry into freelancing work, other gig work, e-commerce, and other online work became a lot lower. There was, therefore, a global group of one-person companies with laptops under their arms looking for a space to work. Many of these one-person companies didn't require office space initially. They just needed a desk. They needed to be in the company of like-minded people and to have a decent stream of coffee to keep them going. And these business centres and co-working spaces provided just the solutions for those. It led to the introduction of new co-working space providers that led to hot desks. They led with a hot desk product, but grew to offer small private offices and then whole floors and even customised full managed office buildings. It also meant that incumbent office providers started to offer more co-working space products within their business centres. So these, plus other factors, including macro factors such as society becoming more used to shorter-term ownership or no ownership, for instance, choosing streaming over DVD ownership, led to the growth of flexible workspace. It shows no sign of slowing down either, with commercial real estate agencies predicting that the flex space market will continue to grow year on year and will be worth in excess of £120 billion by the mid-20s. It was recently reported in Property Week that flexible workspace is on track to occupy a volume of 30 million square foot, i.e. 8.5% of the total office stock in the UK by 2024. Okay, so question 2. You mentioned that your services are free. How can that be so? Okay, so with the flexible workspace tenant representation or occupier representation work that we do, i.e. matching an occupier with an appropriate flexible workspace, we do not charge any fee. So yes, that is correct. This is because when we place an occupier or a tenant in a serviced office, managed office, co-working space, business centre, business club, or any other form of flex space, then we are paid a fee by the office provider, operator, or the landlord. So yeah, it would be unethical for us to also charge a fee to the party that is seeking the space, and therefore our services are completely free. We have this arrangement with all providers, operators and landlords that we work with, and the fee basis is universal across the board, meaning that we remain completely impartial and independent and unbiased in the space that we show and recommend. There is actually a directory on our website. There's a link to it in the notes for this podcast, and that shows some of the providers and operators that we work with across various locations. So yeah, whether you're searching and comparing flexible workspace through ours, when you're receiving advice, when we're arranging viewings, assisting with negotiations and helping with the signing of a deal, you will never be charged a fee by us. So I hope that explains how the service works. So question 3, how long have you been going?
Okay, so well, the Office Providers was established in 2009, so approximately 10 years now. I personally have been in the real estate industry for just shy of 20 years now. And the combined experience of our office space advisors here is well over a century now, which is a little scary to think about. So we try not to. Question 4. What happened with WeWork? Okay, so, well, I did say I would answer all questions. That said, this is a very big, open, general question, and one that you could easily do a whole episode on. And I'm sure there are other episodes out there about WeWork. There is a large volume of articles around the web written from different perspectives, so I will leave you to discover and decipher those. Purely from a flex-based product and service perspective, which is what we and our clients are concerned about, all I can say is that WeWork have got some great products in some great locations and have set some great benchmarks for the rest of the industry. They've opened the world's eyes up as to what a co-working space or a business centre can look and feel like. So yeah. Okay, so question 5. We need our own dedicated broadband. Is this possible in a serviced office? Well, yes. You can even have your own comms room in a serviced or managed office in many cases. In most cases, if you were opting for a dedicated comms room, this would need to be incorporated into your office space, into your suite. So you'll have to opt for a size and configuration of suite that will incorporate it. This would be arranged by liaising with the facilities manager for the office provider, who will in turn liaise with the property stroke facilities manager of the landlord. In most cases, the occupier would be responsible for the installation, maintenance, running costs, and so on in most of those cases. But yes, this is a very common request and so can easily be arranged. How it is dealt with varies from provider to provider and property to property, and specific requirement to specific requirement. But yes, dedicated broadband is absolutely possible. Question 6. Can I bring my dog to the office? Well, yeah. Many establishments such as cafes, restaurants, pubs, bars are now dog friendly, and office space and co-working spaces are of no exception. In many cases, anyway. A lot of co-working space centres are dog friendly, as are many business centres, serviced office centres, and so on. It does vary from property to property and from provider to provider. But yes, there are many offices that allow well-behaved, clean and quiet dogs in your office. So yeah. Okay, question 7. Can we have our own signage? There are many business centres, serviced office centres that allow occupiers to place their company signage and branding in the reception directory. If you have a private office suite, then in the majority of cases you can have signage on your entrance door too. Many centres are unbranded too, so there is no signage
or branding displaying the company name of the provider or the operator, just the occupiers. Within your own private office room or suite, in the majority of cases, you can brand it however you wish. For external signage, this is slightly more unusual, and it really depends on the property, how much space the occupier has, and on the permissions of the local authorities too. Signage in windows of external offices, for instance, that may be permitted if it is approved by the provider, the property's landlord, but it also must comply with local authority or council rules as well. So there isn't one answer to this question, because it really does vary depending on the situation. But in many cases, signage and branding is absolutely fine. Okay, question 8. What is a floating desk? Okay, well, unfortunately, it's not quite as cool as it sounds. A floating desk is just another name for a hot desk, i.e. refers to the allocation of unspecified desk space within a co-working space or co-working building. So if you have a floating desk membership with a co-working space provider, then it means that you have use of desk space, but this space is not reserved by you, and you may have to use another desk from one day to the next. But many operators also provide dedicated desk memberships, which means that a desk is reserved by you and no one else can use it. You can make it your own with your own photos and decorations if you wish, in most cases. And there is also a locker often provided with a dedicated desk membership, for your own security. So you've basically then got your own sort of mini office, minus walls and a door. So yeah, hopefully that explains what a floating desk is. So, question 9. Are serviced offices more expensive than leased offices? Okay, this is a very common question. So, yeah, there's various calculators and relatively simple algorithms on the web that claim to compare serviced offices with leased offices. So some of these work and create a start in the process, but more extensive research really has to be carried out, and it should be done on a case-by-case basis. Firstly, it should be noted that leasehold rent and the cost of a serviced office desk cannot be compared directly, as they're not the same. It's not like for like. Leasehold office rent applies only to the rent, and on top of that, the occupier or the tenant must pay a service charge, business rates, if in the UK, or local taxes anywhere else, insurance, utility costs. They must install and pay for broadband. They need to furnish the property themselves, clean the property, buy bathroom and kitchen supplies, and when they leave the property at the end of their lease, they need to decorate the property and fix any damage that they may have caused. This is known as dilapidations. Leasehold office rent in the UK is a unit price of a square foot of floor space paid per year or per annum. So in Manchester, that might be £30 per square foot per annum. In the City of London, that might be around the £65 per square foot mark. Serviced offices are priced completely differently because an occupier pays a monthly licence fee, and this covers
the majority of accommodation related costs. So the unit with serviced offices is the cost per desk per month, which in Manchester that might be £250 per desk per month, and in the city this could be around £500 per desk per month. Some might go down the lines of working out that a desk takes up between 65 and 100 square feet, and those calculators might break down the square footage cost, but it doesn't give the full picture. It may be best for one company to have all of their costs rolled into one, as they don't have the resources to manage the various contracts and payments. And it may be better for another company, for instance, a national or multinational, to opt for leased office space because they have the resources to manage the various contracts, because they have an in-house facilities or property management function, which would also mean that they get economies of scale on certain contracts and suppliers. So, also payment scheduling is different between leased offices and serviced offices. With leased office space, it's quite common for rent to be paid quarterly in advance, i.e. 3 months rent up front, whereas with serviced offices, the payment scheduling is monthly. So, again, it depends on a company or an individual's preference. With leasehold offices, there will be several outgoings that pertain to the business accommodation, and they might all be on quarterly payment schedules too. So it's not an easy question to answer, and it depends on various factors. It also depends on how an individual business defines cost, whilst looking at the differences in price and value and time cost, and various other areas. So, yeah, it's a difficult question to answer in general terms. Okay, question 10. What are serviced offices and what's the difference between them and leasehold offices? Okay, so this is where we've bunched the questions together. So, please see answer above for some of the information. I'll try and define both of them in a few sentences, and hopefully this, plus the previous answer, will help to explain the differences. So a leasehold office is a form of commercial real estate that is owned by a landlord and is leased to a tenant for a prescribed amount of time. A lease documents the relationship between the landlord and the tenant, and also the obligations and responsibilities of both parties. This is written under landlord and tenant law, in the UK anyway. The tenant pays rent to the landlord as prescribed by the lease. During the term of occupation, the tenant is directly responsible for the demised or occupied space in terms of repairing and insuring the space. The tenant is responsible for the costs of operating the space. Contracts and associated costs are managed by the tenant and include, but are not limited to, items such as utilities, furnishing, cleaning, bathroom supplies, and so forth. The tenant is usually also responsible for the maintenance of the common areas of a property via the service charge, and this is proportionally paid by the tenant, depending on the amount of space that they occupy within the building in relation to other occupiers and the landlord. Further information regarding leasehold offices can be found on the link that has been put in the notes to this episode. And a serviced office is a form of commercial real estate that is operated by an office provider, also known as a serviced office provider, and is licensed to an occupier. A license documents the relationship between the office provider and the occupier. Licenses cover a shorter period of time, usually up to 2 years, and do not offer the same protection to either party as a lease. Most licenses give both the office provider and the occupier the right to terminate the agreement within a relatively short notice period. The occupier pays a license fee to the office provider as prescribed by the license to occupy. The license fee covers the occupancy costs, and in most cases the office provider is responsible for the costs of operating the space. These contracts and associated costs are managed by the office provider and include, but are not limited to, utilities, furnishing, cleaning, bathroom supplies, insurance, reception costs, security costs, and so forth. Further information regarding serviced offices can be found on the page that is linked to from the notes for this podcast. Just as a side note, in some cases, the office provider is also the owner, stroke landlord of the property. Okay, question 11. What are managed offices? So managed offices are a little more difficult to define as they are unique to each situation. They can be described as sitting somewhere between a leasehold office and a serviced office. In most cases, 3 parties are involved: the landlord, the managed office provider, and the occupier. In most cases, a normal conventional office lease is drawn up between the landlord and the managed office provider for a particular amount of time. At the same time, a legally binding agreement is drawn up between the managed office provider and the occupier. The agreement documents how the managed office provider will manage the occupied space on behalf of the occupier. These agreements are bespoke to the parties, but cover items including the fitting out of the space, the technical specifications of the space, the services provided, and so on. It may include other items that may be ordinarily included in a serviced office license, such as cleaning, utilities, broadband, contract management, etc. It may also include the provisions of reception staff, security staff, and other items. To occupiers, managed offices provide the benefits of increased security because as in the security of tenure, because the space is held by way of a lease, albeit through a third party. Other benefits include the ability to customise their space and the ability to outsource some or all of the facilities and property management items that would normally fall to a tenant under the terms of a conventional lease. Question 12. What about the security of information in a co-working space? Okay, so when working in any open or public space, it is important to be vigilant, as we all know. When in a co-working space, hot desking centre, members' business club, business lounge, or any other form of collective shared workspace, okay, it's not the same as working in a completely public space like a coffee shop or a bar, but it is somewhat useful to treat it in a similar way. Oftentimes it is, in a co-working space, there is absolutely no issue at all. Everyone is like-minded and in the same position. And for that reason, they are self-policed in a sense. But that being said, why take the risk? I mean, close your laptop or even carry it with you if you're leaving your desk, in the same way that many office workers would do in a normal office setting. If you are in a hot desking centre and you opt for a dedicated desk, there are many centres that provide private lockers at the desk, and others have communal changing areas and locker rooms as well. But generally, if you're working on something that you wouldn't work on in a public Wi-Fi zone, like a coffee shop, then you would be wise to apply the same rules to a co-working space too. Question 14. I've looked at your Dublin page and I think I could work out of 2 or 3 of them very happily. Could I try before I buy, so to speak? Okay. Yes, this is quite a common question, and there are usually quite a few solutions to it. But firstly, the main thing to do is to tour the market and actually view suitable options from all providers. When you actually physically touch and feel a space, you can get a true sense of it, the atmosphere, the community, and how it will work for your business. If you have done that and are still undecided, we can look at a few different ways of doing it. If the cluster that you like belong to the same office provider, this makes things quite easy in most cases, particularly if the space has a co-working space function. The office provider will be happy for you to work out of a few of them whilst you make your decision. Many providers have a multiple location or club membership option available, allowing you to use multiple locations. So you can try out various spaces within their portfolios. You could take a short club or co-working space membership before committing to a particular property. Or you could use club membership as a long-term solution, especially if you prefer variety in your working environment. If the cluster you like belongs to various office providers, then short-term contracts or membership, co-working memberships at various properties that you like can also be arranged. So you can actually sort of create your own short-term trials of the space before you commit to a longer contract. So yes, it's there's various ways of doing that within the flexible workspace market, absolutely. Okay, question 15. What's the difference between a hot desk and a co-working space? Okay, so a hot desk is a type of co-working space. Although you can also have a co-working space or building property that offers hot desks. It depends on how it is worded, as different providers refer to certain products in different ways. Co-working is generally a term that refers to a style of collaborative workspace where people are working on their own but sharing certain items, whether that be the lighting, heating, the roof over their heads, and so on. Much like a cafe or library, which are also co-working spaces, technically. So a co-working space can refer to a space or a property that provides desks and places to work in a shared workspace environment. Or it can refer to a desk within said property. The desks or spaces within a co-working space or property usually come in 2 varieties, which are determined by your membership package. A hot desk, also known by some as a floating desk, this means you can plonk yourself down at any desk, plug in and get to work. If you leave the building for lunch or for the day, there is a good chance someone will have chosen your spot when you come back, and you'll need to find a new hot desk.
A dedicated desk, that's slightly different. These are also found in a co-working space or a property, but the desk is yours for the duration of your membership. So no one else sits there. You'll have a locker to keep your valuables in, and in most cases, you can leave your things out on your desk and make it your own, so to speak. Within reason, of course, as most centres have clear desk policies, but they do want everyone to be happy. So it does vary from co-working space provider to provider. A dedicated desk is the closest to having your own private office room, but in a shared workspace environment. A hot desk membership is the cheapest co-working space membership package. Question, 16. It says on your website you work with the majority of office providers, stroke operators in any location. Why not all of them? So we're adding new properties to our website every day, and these are from both existing and new providers and operators. There are some locations where we do work with all of them. Some that we haven't met all of them yet because they've just started operating, for instance. Some office providers also don't wish to work with brokers or agents because they have their own marketing channels, or they are full, or for other reasons. And there are certain properties that we wouldn't wish to promote as they wouldn't be suitable for all of our clients. So in answer to the question, we only list approximately 99% of the flex space market because, one, we haven't got round to some of them. Two, some providers don't work with brokers. And three, some of the properties in the market just wouldn't work for us and for our clients. But we do our utmost to show clients everything that a particular market has to offer. Question 17. We like the look of some of the business centres and co-working centres, but they appear as if they'd be noisy with ping pong tables and so on. Okay, well, these are marketing shots, and the workspaces are not as loud as they look. They simply they just couldn't be. They wouldn't work. The majority of co-working spaces are community driven, so there are with that unwritten rules about noise and so forth. These are, after all, places of business, and the providers and operators of these spaces know that productive space is profitable for them. So there are breakout areas where you might find the ping pong tables and the sort of coffee shop areas and that kind of thing, where there is usually a low level of chatter, but then there are also phone booths for calls and so on. But many do have recreational areas which are quite heavily promoted, but these are kept away from the quiet zones and making these productive workspaces. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our first Q&A session. So it leaves me to say is thank you for sending in all of your questions. This is very much an ongoing thing that we will do, like an office-based surgery or workshop. We haven't quite figured out the title we'll go with. We're guessing the future Q&A episodes will be shorter, as we may have covered certain topics in earlier sessions, but we will see. We will just let it organically evolve. If you have any questions, comments and feedback, please email contact us at theofficeproviders.com and mark the subject podcast so it gets to the right place. Or contact us through Twitter, which is Our handle is tops.com, all spelled out in letters, where you can DM us. So we hope this has been useful. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care.